Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Audit Committee meeting on April the 17th. Before we begin the meeting, I'd like to begin, as we always do, by acknowledging that this afternoon we're gathering on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honor the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. We really only have one item of business today, and that is the Audit Committee and the Audit Status Report. But before we begin, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Didn't think there would be, but always good to check. And with that, we will turn it over to our incredible internal auditor, Karina Tasker.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm going to be giving you an update on 4 audits which have been completed since our last meeting. So these will include the technology field inventory physical count that I had done, a compliance review of our parking and mileage expenses, a status update on the inventory audit from 2021, and a brief mention of a third-party review that was done on market processes. Also in progress right now is a capacity and organizational review of our underground locate services in response to a change in legislation, ongoing work, which is now in phase 2 of our training documentation, and a program review of the facility booking process as requested by Council. If you recall, when we launched the new online booking tool and risk assessment process last year, you had requested a report on customer and staff satisfaction with the tools and a report on the uptake for the Indigenous fee waiver. So that will be coming in the second quarter report. So the first audit today is the physical inventory count of the technology assets that are deployed in the field, which is different from the physical inventory count that I did previously on the technology assets which were in storage. So the objective of this audit was to do a physical count of all of the assets which are deployed to staff and compare it to our asset database. And this is the first time that this type of review has been done. All city locations and facilities were in scope for this count. However, only the printers, monitors, docking stations, laptops, and desktops were counted. Other low-dollar peripherals, such as keyboards and mice, are not included in our database, so they were not counted. And phones, both desktop and cell phones, were out of scope. So in order to conduct this audit, I took a two-pronged approach. So first, I took a team of TIS staff with me, and together we checked the asset tags for every asset at City Hall, the COF, and Fire Headquarters, since these are the largest locations with the highest concentration of staff and therefore assets. These represented 81% of the total assets in the database. You can see on the screen a sample of what I mean by the asset tags. These are simply the green stickers that you'll see with a barcode and a number, which should be attached to each asset. For the remaining 58 outlying locations, such as community centers, arenas, and other city facilities, I sent a list of the assets that were listed in the database that were supposed to be at each location to the management of those locations and asked them to verify the assets if they existed. So in both situations, whether I was checking them or whether management was, the instructions were the same. We compared the location of the asset, the owner or who was using the asset, and any related assets to the entry in the database for that asset tag number. And when I say related assets, I mean any printers, monitors, or docking stations that are being used with a particular laptop or desktop, and they're linked in the database. So we were checking that those relationships were still valid. So what we found was that of the 3,945 assets in the database, 60% were found in the correct location, assigned to the correct employee, and attached to the correct related asset. 22% were found at the right location, but either had the wrong employee or wrong related asset attached to them. And 3% were in the wrong location, meaning that they were missing on the floor or the facility where they were supposed to be, but we found them elsewhere in our count. And there were 16%, or 620 assets, which were not found anywhere. On the flip side, there were also 421 additional assets which were found, but which were not currently listed in the database. So although finding the root cause of the missing assets is impossible at this point, since this represents years of accumulated data, I did speak with TIS and management on possible causes. So they said that the most likely cause is that when assets were dispositioned at the end of life, that they were never removed from the database. Similarly, the found assets are new assets which were never added to the database. I was concerned that some of the missing assets might be due to employee theft, and while this is still a possibility, none of the management that I questioned about their missing assets seemed to think that the assets should be there. In other words, all of the assets that they expected to be there were, and that any missing assets were likely old and obsolete items which had been returned to TIS. There were also a few cases where the asset tags were missing or illegible, which could account for a few of the missing items. TIS also confirmed that the theft of laptops or desktops is not likely due to security measures installed on them, which render them unusable without a valid city login credential, meaning that if an employee left the city and took their laptop with them, they would not be able to use it. So while I can't definitively say that no theft has occurred, it is deemed unlikely at this point. In the future, with more focus on keeping the database up to date, it will be easier to identify when things go missing and identify the cause immediately. So there are a few minor recommendations to help facilitate that. First, TIS needs to develop a procedure for all staff to follow when adding, deleting, or changing assets to ensure that the database is kept up to date. They should also share the divisional lists with management, as it should be a shared responsibility to ensure divisions are tracking the assets that they own. The updated list from this audit should be used to right-size the computer reserve charges, which are allocated through budget based on the number of assets. They should also implement rotating cycle counts using a similar verification process with a list of assets sent via email to the management to verify, with a full count involving internal audit every 5 years. And finally, in order to speed up the count and eliminate errors in reading the numbers on the barcodes, a barcode scanner process should be implemented for the next full count. Are there any questions about this audit?
If we have one, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, you said that if somebody had a computer or a laptop or whatever and left the city, they wouldn't be able to use it because they wouldn't have the login. Could these pieces of equipment not be returned to factory setting and they could continue to use them?
I've been informed by TS that they cannot. There are special security features on it.
Okay. And I think in the report you said that further assessment or further counts would be done every 5 years. Do you feel that's sufficient given the findings this time around?
So I'm also recommending cycle counts. So every year there would be a rotating subset of the full amount that would be sent to management. It just wouldn't be me going out to do it. They would be validating them with TIS to make sure that the list is up to date.
Okay, thank you.
So just, I mean, the one question I have, is there not software that actually TIS can use to essentially take the IP address, because everything pretty much has an IP address now, and just use that to link it up to our asset database, and if something, so you, in a sense, can practically, not that we would want to, but practically check it every day if there's anything that sort of strays from it.
So it only attaches to a few of the different types of assets. So we did do that as part of this review. When they ran the list of assets, any of them that came up with the IP address, we knew were being used at a city facility, but not every asset returned a valid IP address. So those were the ones that we were checking, and possibly going forward, we'll have a bigger percentage of the list that does come back with that IP address.
I think the other important thing to note here, I mean, it's obviously worth, continuing to monitor, but most of these things become obsolete within 3 years anyway, so that's the other factor. Councillor Chapman, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry, thank you. I was just wondering of the assets that you highlight here, monitors, desktops, printers, laptops, docking stations, do you have a breakdown on what seems to have gone missing?
Yes, I do. So of the computers, there was, I don't know if you want dollar amounts or numbers, but there were 114 computers, 130 laptops, 108 docking stations, 154 monitors, and 94 printers that went missing. But then on the flip side, there was also almost the same amount that were found. So ones that were dispositioned, replaced with other newer ones.
Okay, thank you.
Imagine there's stuff on that list that probably goes back to when a certain elected official may have been keeping track of that inventory and adding to the outdatedness of it. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. This may not be...
Oh, sorry, my mistake.
Sorry. All right. Sorry. This may not be a question for you to answer, but when we do have computers and monitors and things like that that are coming offline, if it's possible for having to be repurposed at maybe a community center or a library, I think that would be something we could consider, I hope. So I don't know if that's for you or maybe another member of staff.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if once they come to the end of their life, if that's, I know that they do recycle the ones that are coming off.
I see Ms. Robb has queued in.
Yeah, thanks. Through the mayor, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that we recycle and we actually get rebates for them through green incentive programs, and so that goes back into technology for the future.
Great, thank you. Over to you, Rita.
All right. So the next audit is a compliance audit of the employee parking and mileage expenses. And the objective was just to test compliance against parking and mileage reimbursement policies. And this is a standard audit that's included in the rotating list of compliance and controls audits. So there were a number of tests conducted, including a few new items that are in response to changed parking options and the work from home program. So first, I tested all of the internal customers who had signed up for the new 60% parking rate to ensure that none of them were parking more than 60%. The new rate structure was put into place during the pandemic, so this was not something that I'd tested previously. I also tested to make sure that anyone who was using the 60% rate and who had claimed parking reimbursement for business travel did not claim more than they had paid. For all of the work from home participants, I checked to make sure that none of them were claiming parking on days that they were working from home, even if they had business mileage for the day. The remainder of the tests are standard tests, which make sure that the correct mileage was calculated and that sufficient detail of the trip was included on the mileage claim, that staff are claiming the lesser of mileage from home or the office site when driving directly from home to the job site, that the number of parking days claimed did not exceed the number of mileage days claimed, that no one was claiming parking on Sundays when parking is free, and that no one was taking advantage of being able to claim their full monthly parking amount if they drive 11 or more days in a month. So the findings were minimal and not cause for concern. First, I found 8 employees who pay the 60% parking rate who parked more than 60%. Of these, 5 had been previously identified by parking staff during a spot check, while 3 were new ones that I had identified. In both cases, the staff were informed and asked to pay the additional days and to determine if the full parking plan was more appropriate for their needs going forward. Note that the parking enterprise will be installing a new parking system shortly, which will eliminate this problem, as all parking that is actually used will be billed directly to the customer automatically. I found that there were no cases where the 60% parking customers had claimed parking reimbursement more than they had paid for, and no cases where the work-from-home participants had claimed parking on their work-from-home day. For the 20% sample of all other claims, I found that all the parking claims were correct, and that no one had claimed parking on Sundays. There were, however, 3 mileage claims with incorrect amounts and 2 with insufficient detail to substantiate the claim. There were also no situations where employees had claimed 11 or more days of mileage that were unjustified. So overall, the errors found were minor and can be rectified through further education around the policy. It is recommended that finance send out periodic reminders to both staff and approvers about making sure to provide sufficient detail to validate the claim, claiming the lesser of mileage from work or home to the job site, and an encouragement to use the automatic mileage calculator within the Concur system, rather than manually calculating the number of kilometers traveled in order to avoid addition errors. Are there any questions about this audit?
Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair. Just, can you just inform me? So 60% of parking customers not parking more than 60%, is that at City Hall? Or is that like in city-wide lots?
Most of them are at City Hall, but it is any employee that pays for parking at one of the city parking lots. During the pandemic, they instituted the ability to pay a 60% rate instead of the full monthly rate.
Okay, all right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, those appear to be all the questions. So on to the next one.
All right. So the third audit is a status update of the inventory controls audit that was previously conducted in 2021. So as a reminder, any service that has undergone a review or audit will be subject to a status update at least 1 year following the original audit. The purpose is to check in on the status of recommendations and hold staff accountable for addressing the findings. The original objective for this inventory audit was to ensure that there are adequate controls in place to protect stores' assets and ensure operations are as efficient and effective as possible. This is a more comprehensive review than the annual physical inventory of the store's assets and includes things such as physical security measures, record-keeping controls, and process improvements. So of the 9 original recommendations, 4 are complete, 1 is in progress, and 1 is no longer required. There are 3 recommendations not started yet, but action is planned for 2023. They included, first, revisiting the tool loan program, and this is a program where operating areas can sign out larger tools that they may not use frequently and thus not want to purchase for their division. There were, however, a desire from some divisions to purchase their tools outright rather than having to sign them out, which needs to be reviewed further. Second, during the pandemic, we saw the creation of the online order form to eliminate in-person contact at the store's counter. Customers have provided several suggestions for improvement to further streamline the process, which still need to be evaluated for feasibility. And finally, as noted during the physical inventory, the city manufactures our own pickled sand and brine for winter maintenance. It was found that the unit costs were outdated and need to be recalculated to better reflect the current cost of the product. Are there any questions on this status update?
There don't appear to be any.
Good. Easy breezy today. All right, so the fourth and final topic is market modernization review. So at the last Audit Committee meeting, it was requested that you be informed of any reviews done through the Ontario Government Audit and Accountability Funding. So this is just a brief update on the latest project to have received this funding. The intent of the funding is to provide Ontario municipalities with the ability to conduct service delivery and expenditure reviews. The funds must be used to hire a third-party consultant who will provide analysis and recommendations for process improvements and cost savings. For this third installment of the funding, the city chose to look at modernizing and digitizing several processes at the market. It was found that vendor onboarding, contracting, and event management processes were manual and not optimal. This was resulting in redundant process steps, wasted time for staff, customers, and vendors, lost opportunities with potential vendors walking away before contracts could be finalized, and mistrust between vendors, partners, and the market. So with the funding, the city hired Leading Edge Group to conduct a lean review of the market processes with the overall goal of streamlining and digitizing them. Since this is not my report and I'm not familiar with the details, I won't go through the findings or recommendations, but if you're interested to read them and read the consultant's report, you can find it on the city's website. There is a direct link within my status report, or you can go to kitchener.ca and search on Audit and Accountability to go to the landing page where all of the consultant reports are found. What I will share is the expected benefits that could be realized if the consultant recommendations are implemented. It is anticipated that there will be quicker turnaround times for all processes, resulting in 400 to 500 hours of staff time saved per year. There will also be an 8-week reduction in the lead time to onboard new vendors, which will reduce those lost opportunities. There will be staff capacity to focus on strategic goals, more efficient processes, and better transparency with internal partners. So keeping in mind that I'm not the author of this report, are there any general questions about this review?
Any questions for Karina on this? Councillor Clancy.
Yeah, I have to read the report, but just curious from staff, like what are the next steps, I guess? Will we hear back about how the recommendations could be implemented, or I guess that might take a minute, but just curious about what you see the future of the report being.
Sorry, Mr. Reedman.
Yeah, through the mayor. So typically, staff implement the recommendations in the report, and other things that have benefited, like our development services review, received some funding through that work. We've reported back sort of at a high level in another report. On the market one in particular, we would incorporate it in any updates on the market through the transformation work that's happening over the few years.
Thanks.
And there don't appear to be any further questions.
All right, that's it then.
Wow, okay,
That was
thank you. Just on behalf of council, thanks for all of these updates and the work that's being done. And we look forward to seeing you next quarter. Awesome, thanks, Karina. So this meeting is adjourned, and we'll go right into special council in a couple minutes as clerks does whatever they need to do to get ready for the next meeting.